Hold, because I have to have a coughing fit and
we have high production value, but not that high.
Please be advised that this episode of Caution includes descriptions and mentions of childhood trauma, street harassment, domestic violence, teen pregnancy, oppressive family roles, fact-checking child sexual abuse, abusive patterns in family dynamics, alienation, forced obedience, and crushed curiosity. We highly encourage our audience to review our trigger guide for self-care at healtoend.org/caution.
I was a teenager who had just started traveling by myself in public, and I was taking the subway. Public transit in general is pretty gender segregated in Iran. So men go in the front, women go in the back. My friends are like, oh yeah, let's go in the co-ed cars. It's a very crowded city and subways always get packed. We just get pushed into the door packed. As the movement is happening, I start feeling pressure in my crotch. It took me a minute to even realize what was happening, but I'm wearing underwear, I'm wearing jeans. That day I had my period. I was wearing a pad. On top of it, I'm wearing a gown. But this person had managed to put their hand in my crotch from behind and just really vigorously touching me. It was so packed, I couldn't even turn around to see who is doing it. I couldn't stop anything. It was just moving with it. So we moved into the car, and by the time I turned around, I had no fucking idea who it was. I didn't know what to do. And so here I am for the rest of that ride, sitting there, looking at every man in that crowd. And I knew he knew who I was, but I didn't know. At that point, I had experienced a lot of verbal street harassment, plenty of really graphic, explicit street harassment, but it was just verbal. This was the first time when I experienced physical harassment. I really didn't know what to do about it. I didn't tell any of my friends. I considered telling my family, but I kind of considered my options. This is the first time as a young person that I am getting the privilege of traveling in public spaces by myself and with my friends. If I were to tell my family that this is what happened to me, first of all, I'm sure they will be very outraged. And second of all, they're going to want to solve this. And the solution is going to be some version of limiting my freedom. On top of the shame that comes with admitting that I was target of harassment. I basically gauged my options and I didn't tell anyone because I was too afraid. It wouldn't even be so much about, oh, well, how are you feeling? Are you okay? What is going through your head? How are you dealing with this? It would be everybody being very overly angry. Yeah. And I had experienced that before around verbal harassment where my family, especially like my brother and my father, would be so angry and outraged that there would be no room for my feelings anymore. The solutions were always, okay, well, here's how we're gonna manage your movement in order to achieve results of you not getting harassed. I think about how unfortunate and sad it is that I wasn't even expecting that sharing a story like that in my family would result in any kind of emotional support for me. It wasn't even on my radar. Here is this thing happened to me. I don't know what to do with it. I feel ashamed. I feel shitty. And where do I go with it? What do I do with it? I didn't want my freedom to be taken away, but it would have been really fucking nice to just be able to say, yeah, this thing happened. It just sucks. Can we just all sit with that? As a teenager, I have to move in a society that these things just happen to my body.
Fear was a constant theme in my childhood, and confusion. A lot of fear around things I was supposed to be afraid of and not understood. There's also a fear of the family itself, trying to keep an idea of the family. When I was 17 or 18 at the time, at that point, I had already run away from my house. I'm living with the boyfriend at the time. Soon after I left, I informed my mother that I was pregnant. She goes into a complete to-do list as to how to rectify this situation. And she's like, you're pregnant? Okay, you're gonna come with me. We're gonna go. And she actually took me to get fitted for a wedding dress. One day she just took me somewhere. I didn't know where we were going. They fitted me for a wedding dress with room to spare for the growing belly. She set up this time where we were supposed to meet at City Hall. She never asked me how I felt, nothing. It was like, you must come here, we must fix this. And the day that I was supposed to meet her, I never showed up. And it was like one of the first times, besides the time I ran away from home, that I went against my mother. And I remember that night, the same reaction I had the night I ran away from home. I was ill, physically ill. I was vomiting. I was so sick because I was so worried about my mother, about how I hurt her, how I have destroyed this idea of a good family. Like, I was the last one. My sister kind of screwed up with her drugs and I ran away from home, but she can fix it here. Here, I can get married and it could be okay. And I was just like, I fucked it up for my mom. I was so afraid of her wrath, about her disappointment, that I just destroyed this idea. More so about, what the fuck am I gonna do? I'm a teenager now, I'm about to have a baby. And on top of that, the person that I was with, I was in a DV situation, but couldn't share that with my mom for the very same reasons you said. If I were to tell my mom, I can't marry him, that would have been a whole nother thing about how women are supposed to be strong and that no man should hit a woman. And if a woman allows it, then she's weak. I was like, I'm weak. I'm this, I'm that. It was a lot of stuff put on me because I was afraid, and my mother was afraid of what everyone else would think. Everyone in the building, everyone on the block, everyone in the family. Fear very much drove a lot of decisions there. But in the end, I think in both stories, fear did nothing, actually. It did not bring about any kind of resolution, any witnessing, anything. It just created more.
Did fear ever stop you from disclosing information about your body or sexual violence to your family? I mean, we say fear makes a family, and I oftentimes think about the ideas we have around what family is supposed to be, very much, first of all, created around fear. We are supposed to grow up and want to be in these nuclear families with a spouse and children. In very binary terms, if you're a man in your late 30s, 40s, who has, for whatever reason, decided not to form this kind of a family or doesn't have it, you're kind of looked at like a loser. But it also depends. If you're very rich and have a lot of status, then it was your choice. You're just a free man. You just cannot be committed to these things. So there is a saving grace there. But if you are a woman in your late 30s, 40s, who never had children, who never got married, does not have that nuclear family, you're looked at like you're a psychopath. Like there's something really wrong with you. If you couldn't basically make a family happen, the assumption is, first of all, you weren't good enough for it to make a family happen. And so what was really that wrong with you that you couldn't do it? And worse than that, if you decided not to make a family happen, then you're definitely like psychologically damaged. So again, that comes back to the gendered idea of family is the woman's responsibility. It's a thing that the woman wants. Men get sucked into it. Women are the ones who want it, desire it, and create it. Men are the ones who get sucked into it, tricked into it, actually.
Yes. Surveys indicate about 86% of Americans see marriage as important or essential for an adult. So when we think about this broad idea of family, it's nuclear family, right? And there are roles. Not everybody fits in this role, of course, but these are the roles that exist because people fight out of these roles consistently. Even today, 2022, there are people still fighting to not be mothers and work. The roles are a nurturing mother who wants to devote her entire being to all of her children, and she will devote every aspect of her life to those children, or else she is not a good mother. She will do everything. She will suffer for her children, be a martyr for her children, and do as much as she can until they leave the house, and even then some, because that is the measure of a good mother. And then a father. This role is, you got to bring in the money. You might not be emotional, but you're there going out there doing the work and supporting the structure. And then there are the kids. You behave, you be good, you listen to your parents. They're going to raise you up, teach you what's right, and bring you out into the world so you can go to college and create your own families so that you can continue this tradition. That's this beautiful utopian idea and the roles that fit with it. Two things I think about here. One, the concept of family has evolved, but we don't want to think that it is evolved. It's a man and a woman. No, it's anybody who loves each other. No, it's this. It's fighting against this thing because it is an evolution. We are evolving and families have shifted consistently. Grandparents raising their grandchildren, aunts raising their nieces and nephews, intergenerational families living together, as always, in a lot of POC communities. The difference is there, but society doesn't allow us to evolve into that. We're still the other. Here we are, these nice roles, and here's this one person that is born into the family that doesn't fit into that role. They're disabled, they're queer, they're trans, they're fat, they look different, they're not conventionally beautiful, whatever the case may be, they fuck up that unit, even though that family could be absolutely supportive. That structure creates it so that that person is always an outsider. That person is always wrong. That person is always trying to fit in. If we had a different structure of that family, that people can shift roles, we are actually supporting someone who is born, watching them, giving them tools, and seeing them blossom into whatever human they are going to be, not in the context of what we want them to be, which is a reflection of us. We never have any kind of leeway for creating agency outside of that idea. When you're a queer kid, you already know. Nobody has to say shit to you, you know. And here is a wonderful little petri dish for secrecy and shame when people don't fit because they're isolated. And who are the best people that a lot of harm doers target? Isolated, alone. We have the tools and we work those tools every day to construct the situations that we're in right now because we keep using the tools that were given to us and in this system and just regurgitating it.
Family begins with fear. I gotta form a family so I'm not called a loser. I gotta form a family so nobody thinks I'm a weirdo. I gotta form a family so I fit in. And then I gotta stay in it so that you look like you're okay.
And I have to form a family because I have to survive.
What I want to really see, if women were fully financially protected in society, if they had all of their basic needs met in society, I want to see how that would make a difference in how much they would desire marriage, family, and staying in relationships. We talk about this often in the context of domestic violence. What if we just took care of people? How would that change the numbers for domestic violence, for child sexual abuse, for marital rape? How many people are desiring to be in family for subconsciously knowing that's the way they survive, and then staying in families because they know that's the only way they can survive? And actually, these are not hard to imagine. The numbers are there. There are countries who've done this. We know for a fact the difference it makes. We know for a fact that when people are financially independent, they are much less at risk of staying in terrible relationships. Studies show lack of economic support poses a serious barrier for abused women to leave violent relationships. In one experiment, unconditional cash transfers to women reduced incidences of forced sexual acts by as much as 66%.
My mother raising me, it was all about fear. It was like fearing other people that are not the family, fearing men, penises, no real explanation. Like anytime I wore a dress, the rule was you wear shorts under your dress and your skirts. And that was it. It was just told. Not like a real discussion about why this is. There were rules around the house about how I could walk around and there was certain pajamas I couldn't wear if my father was there. Why? My father loves me. What is that about? A lot of the rules and regulations were about this fear thing and keeping me in line, not getting pregnant, not being seen as a slut, not being seen as a bad kid, listening to your parents, all of those things.
From an early age, I was very aware of the gender differences, not because I have been educated in any sense about it. It was just, I was aware of the differences of most of the discriminations that existed. So when I was told I needed to cover up certain parts of my body, my chest at certain age, and then I needed to wear longer pants, and then I needed to wear headscarf. I have vivid memories of every one of those moments and how I resisted and how I questioned and how I was told every single time. I will understand when I grow up that I shouldn't question it, that I should just comply, that I will have the answer that I'm looking for when I grow up. I am 33 now. I still don't understand it. I don't know if I need to grow up a little bit more. For me, it was the fear of The thing that I am not told, I cannot understand, I only have to wait to learn. And what if I do this wrong?
It's interesting how we try to raise our kids in a specific way, but we don't follow our own advice. Like, don't yell, don't do this, calm down, don't be slamming doors in my house. And that's what parents do. We live in just a stressful way. We're trying to teach our kids different, but we're modeling the exact thing that we don't want because of this world we live in. And it's really difficult. And we have to stop and rethink living within this structure, knowing the limitations. What are some of the things that we could do to change that dynamic, the ways in which we talk to our children, how we allow for them to have agency and language and be able to fuck up and to say what they feel. And for you, actually, as a parent, to be allowed to say, I'm having a rough day. I'm crying all day because I'm just stressed. Humanizing parenthood as the tough fucking thing that it is, that a lot of times we have to be these strong people that hold it together and martyr. And I'm like, fuck that noise. You are human. You get to cry. You get to feel these feelings. And if we show this realness, we're really showing emotion and showing how we manage and go through these things. Parenthood and childhood is hierarchical, but it's so very boxed. This is parenthood and this is childhood. And what we really need is, this is a family. What is this family structure with, of course, hierarchy, of course, but does it have to be like this? Can it be some other way? Visioning further, what is this family thing that we keep on either trying to attain or fight against? And how this very structure just continues to fuel the very issues that we have in terms of connection.
The resistance to growth, the resistance to change, when you compare that to the narrative of the family of origin, a message that I think it was embedded in my upbringing, and I think it's there a lot, is just that we are the most important people, and nobody else, except for your husband one day, maybe, except for this nuclear family unit, gets to be in this inner circle of yours. And you have to put our everything above your friends, whoever else that may come into your life. Basically, everybody else is secondary. Not only it's an example of fear of change and growth, it's in a scary way very similar to how an abuser would limit social interactions of a victim. And this can get really out of control, right? Like families who in various ways sabotage the child's friendships. If they don't approve of a friendship or boyfriend and girlfriend, they sabotage that and trying to basically keep everything in line. Why would anyone ever put up with someone who tells them you cannot have friends in the relationships if they weren't already used to the idea from their families of origin? If that wasn't already a normalized pattern, why would anyone think abusive behavior is tolerable if they weren't already trained to tolerate it in their families of origin?
It's so subtle and it's under the guise of different things, protection and this and that, but it's there. It's the same tools. Family is our launching pad. And I often say family is the very first place where we actually experience domestic violence. This is the first place I experienced domestic violence. And I learned how to accept things and keep quiet from things. And when you're in a domestic violence situation, a lot of times your harm doer does not want you to grow in any way. That is like not having friends, not going to school, not getting any kind of education. And that's like a harsher reality, but those are in alignment. It's about not allowing this growth.
We talk about fear of CSA, and I'm saying this as someone who's in CSA prevention. I think most families have an over-exaggerated sense of the danger of CSA by a stranger, by online predators. They have an over-exaggerated fear of the sexual harm that can happen to their children because of exposure to porn, for some exposure to sex ed in school or otherwise, exposure to magazines, and also just like teenagers growing up and wanting to sexually explore. I think there's an over-exaggerated sense of the danger that exists within those. And there is a very, very sadly underestimated fear around where I've come to see the real dangers exist around sex, sexuality, and children. And that is all the ways in which we harm children, I'm talking about parents, teachers, older children, everybody around the child. We all sexually harm children in all the ways in which we relate to our own bodies, talk about our own sexualities, talk about bodies and sexualities in general, talk about the culture of sex, like you said, the fear of men, the fear of penises, all the ways in which we relate to these subjects. We are harming children. We are constructing for them a world in which they have to figure out how to navigate it. We underestimate the damage that causes. Do we think if our child never met a stranger in their life, they will be safe from CSA? So what? Do we think if our child never met a stranger in their life, they will be safe from CSA? And we never understand how being in a household where the parents or the caregivers have a sexually abusive connection is going to set that child up sooner or later for domestic violence.
Only 7% of reported cases of child sexual abuse are perpetrated by strangers. In 93% of cases, the harm doer is known to the victim. Sexual violence and CSA from a stranger and sexual violence and CSA from someone you know, there are a lot of similarities and very different in terms of the motive, because like we're constantly talking about power and control. And when we talk about strangers, super easy and clear to make that about power and control. We're trying to think about what it actually is. 90% of this happens with people that we know. The absolute fear of that is, I think, a collective disassociation for our community. We collectively disassociate. It is too fucking hard to even fathom that at every corner, from people you know and see every day, that they could harm your child. That's hard to think about. And I realize that that is fucking difficult. And that is not to say everybody's creeping in the corner, you must be afraid. Again, we're talking about fear. We understand that fear is real. The reality is like working with fear so that fear does not lead us into these decisions, like trying to control our children, not giving our children agency, but using fear as a touch point and then figuring out what from there, what other ways can we figure this out rather than this control.
The thing I never understand is when we do fear-based parenting around CSA, what's the fucking end game here? Parents who raise their children in the sense of, you have to consider me as the authority, and when I say things to you, you don't say no to me. And it's fear-based. If you don't comply, if you say no, don't say no to me because I'm your parent, I'm your authority. And if you do, there are consequences. So we raise children like that and we tell them, but if a stranger tells you something to do you don't want to do, if as a parent I tell you do something you don't want to do, you say yes. Right? In the conversation. But if a stranger tells you to do something you don't want to do, say no to them. Okay, let's say you manage to differentiate between why when a stranger tells you you shouldn't do something, you should say no. And when your parents are saying don't do something, you say yes. And there's a difference. Let's say you manage that. What happens when the people the child knows, when the figures of authority who are known to the child are telling them to do something they don't want to do? How the fuck are they supposed to turn that switch up and figure out the difference between, okay, I was supposed to say yes when my parents told me to do things I didn't want to do, but now like this friend of a family, this extended family member, this older child that I've known for years and years is telling me to do something I don't want to do. Now I'm going to say no. Now I'm going to stand up for myself. Now I'm going to seek help. Now I'm going to recognize this is fucked up and I have to do something about it. The math just doesn't add up.
I also think about how damaging when uncles, brothers, fathers, men use the threat of or the actual physical threat of violence to anyone that is dating or possibly might harm their sister, daughter. You know, you better treat her right or else I'll hurt you. Or I don't like that kid. I'm going to treat that kid like shit so that they don't date you. Or don't wear that when you're going out. It is a complete control over the natural process of figuring out who they're attracted to and who they like and who would be an appropriate mate. I think young people like myself ran into the arms of the people that were wrong because I just wanted to get the fuck out. Plus, I didn't understand what the hell was happening. And I wanted to know what that thing was that everybody was talking about. That thing about I will harm somebody if they harm you, it really sets up a dynamic where that most of the time it's a female, where that girl feels like her body is owned by men. And that is the first ownership of her body is by her father, if he is still present. And then later on by other men, right? And then even though it's not explicitly said, that's the way her body is being treated. And so I think that's super, super damaging. It sets up the complete control of girls and women in relationships and placing men as the dominant ones. And then also, it is so harmful to boys all the time. The way in which we completely set up the complete and utter monstrous identity of boys from the get. And when we talk about CSA, we're talking about girls who are sexually assaulted. When we talk about rape culture, we're talking about women. And we teach boys not to be the bad guy. So damaging. So fucking damaging, because all you're doing is saying, honey, you will be a rapist if I don't teach you any better. So just listen up. Do these things and it'll be okay. Just follow 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's horrible because one, the boys don't ever even see themselves as possibly being a victim, which that makes them even more susceptible to being victims, and then even more so not to talk about it. And all of the stuff that comes from that, whether the perpetrator or the harm doer was a male or a female.
26% of CSA victims under the age of 12 are male. While in 88% of reported cases of CSA, the perpetrator is male, female perpetrators make up 9% of harm doers. One thing I want to talk about is how we underestimate the emotional capacity of children. And this is part of what we talk about adultism, the system that believes adults get to have full range of feelings, emotions, thoughts, development, and then children don't have as much, so then therefore their feelings and their experiences are not as significant and we can just dismiss them. We really do a disservice, I think, to children in not allowing them to fully deal with and feel an emotion, a very basic emotion like fear.
I think we consistently set things up by taking away bodily autonomy, taking away those decisions, even if they're making horrible decisions. It is their right. And that's something that parents don't realize. It is the 100% right of every person to make the fucking mistake they want to fucking make. And then the consequences come from that, depending on the society they're in or the system that they live in. And that is how people learn. You literally learn by fucking up and then hopefully getting better. Somebody could tell you day in and day out, this is how you have a relationship. You can read the books, you can go to workshop and say all the things. This is step 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, all of the stuff. But until you are in it, experience it, and then interact with it, you're not actually going to learn it. And we take that learning away consistently. It was like, we're teaching you, but we're not. We're giving you the answers. We're giving you the answers to a test you don't even fucking know about. And now pass. Now pass the test. Oh, you're horrible at relationships. Oh, why can't you keep a man? Why can't you keep a woman? What is wrong with you? Why do you act like you need a mother instead of a lover? All of these issues come up because of family dynamics. I think I lost my train of thought. I was saying something. What was I saying?